Hello everyone, my name is Coach-FattyGiwa-FG. For those of you who are just coming across my page for the first time, I am an autism mom, a mom coach, and an empowerment advocate, an author, and a passionate writer. Last year, I had to accompany my son to another island for him to be able to get support, to get educational support, as we couldn't get the right support for him in the city that we resided. It was a very difficult decision for my family and I. It was one that took a lot of emotional, financial, and physical toll on me personally. But I chose to hold on to the positives, which is what I do most times. And that is why most of the time last year while we were there, and I was sharing and documenting our journey to inspire and to encourage others, there were so many other things that you all didn't see that were happening underneath all of those wins and progress. And we did get a lot of wins last year despite the challenges. But there's this particular incident that happened that I want to share with you all, because one of the reasons why I started to share my journey and documents and be open about our struggles and my journey with my son on the autism spectrum is because as I was going through the whole loneliness of being an isolation and the whole new phase of being a mom with a child on the autism spectrum, I came to realize something and I accepted this realization that my experiences were given to me by God Almighty for a reason, and they are not mine to keep. I don't share everything, but there are certain things that I share because they have a purpose that I know that they will serve purpose or purposes in lives of other people. And this, I feel I feel it will be selfish of me not to share with all of you, because I know there's a mom out there going through this same experience right there, wondering what is going on and how to go about this. And you never know who's going to need this message. So this is raw, unscripted, and honest, a part of a story that I am only sharing for the first time. And I would love you all to listen and watch till the end. And we're all going to reflect and share the lessons as always, because everything that happens to us in this life is for a reason. And whether the good experiences and the not so good experiences, whenever they happen to us, is because God Almighty wants us to pick up a lesson from it. And it will be a total waste for you to go through, even though a no good experience or a very terrible experience, it will be a complete waste if you do not sit with those experiences, think about them, reflect on them, and pick up the lessons and the transformation that those experiences bring. Because there's no matter how little, there's always a transformation that happens. And if there is no transformation that happens, that means you didn't go through that process the way you're supposed to do, or you did not sit down and reflect on it and pick out something. But I know and I believe there's always something that God wants us to pick out from any experiences. Now, let me take you back to why I'm sharing this, because this is exactly a year since my son Khalil we started him on medication. And this action of taking this simple, not so simple because it was very difficult for me to make up my mind, or for us to decide to take him, because for years I've tried to dodge that option, avoid that option of having to put him on medication and all of that. And eventually with the move, there was a lot. It affected us, not just my son, it affected myself, my entire family. We were going through a lot of, the financial, the emotional, the physical. There was so much stress going on. And then my son had a lot of separation anxiety. I also went through separation anxiety a lot. The guilt of having to leave my daughters at home with their father and with employees. My son being away from his sister and his dad. So a lot of those things were going on, which led to my son expressing himself in ways he had never been before. He became very over, it was having a lot of meltdowns. I'm trying to be really careful with my words, because sometimes what we say about our children, especially based on how we feel, is not truly how it's supposed to be said. So I'm trying to be really careful with the words that I use. My son became really affected by this separation, and this showed up negatively at school with how he reacted with others, and a lot of things were going on behind the scene. So I'll try to take you slowly into some of the incidents that were happened in the beginning. We did have a good support system back there. The school supported us to some extent, but it wasn't immediately. It was not until this incident happened, and this is why I want us to share it. And I want to share this, and I want us to pick out the lessons, like I said. So at the beginning of our journey, while I was still there with my son, when we arrived there, he was really not having it. He wanted to see his siblings. He wanted to be with his family, with his dad. He just couldn't understand why we have to be living separately. And it took a toll on him. He would behave and have meltdown in schools, a lot of behaviors, so many behaviors I can't even mention and put them into writing, were happening. Things he had never done before. I saw a different kind of person. I saw my son in a different way. And that meant people interpreting him into a different kind of a person. And it was the most difficult time for me. Each day, I drop him up in school. I come back home. Before I could even say, to get a time to myself and pick up something to do, the phone rings, and there's one complaint after the other, and they call me to come and pick him up. And I wondered, and I asked myself, this is supposed to be an inclusive school. If they weren't capable of taking care of understanding my son or supporting him, why or kids like him, why would they call this an inclusive school? And I kept answering the call. I will go, I pick up my son, most times barely an hour into dropping him off to school. And it is important to note that he was only going to school for half a day. But I was really not looking at the negatives at that time, because what was really important for us as a family is for him to be in an environment where he can socialize. Socialization is the most important part for us, because I know my son loves to socialize. He loves school so much, but then the environment and the people in the school oftentimes misunderstand him, and it tends to become a different story entirely. So he would go to school, and this kept happening. I would get the call, and each time I get the call, it sends me, I get nervous. I start to get anxious. I wonder what is going on this time around, The anxiety creeps in, and I go and I listen, and then, I work with him. We had all of these behavioral charts. We have all of this, I had everything. I was doing so much. And I was expecting also, the support, but I wasn't getting that support. So I was left to myself. And it was like everyone just assumed I had like a magic wand to make all of the problems go away. So this kept on and on until the one of the teachers, by the way, he had amazing teachers, by the way. He had a very good teacher. I think that was the reason why we stayed in the school. If it wasn't for his teacher, his class teacher, she's such an amazing soul. And his special needs teacher, those two teachers were the only people that made us to stay the entire time, and that support went a long way for us. So back to my story, and the teacher, we had a meeting. It was meeting, by the way, meetings after meetings almost every week. And then I will get the feedback and I will call, and we will work with this. I will talk to my son. We will do a lot of activities. It was just getting so tiring. And so during one of the meetings, she recommended that we should try medication. She cited some examples of some cases they've had. They've worked with some other kids with similar behaviors, and medication helped to calm, make it less, reduce the anxiety for them, the meltdowns and the difficulties, so all of those things. And so I discussed it with my husband, and after a few back and forth, we went to see the specialist. We saw a neurologist, and basically we had like different 2-3 opinions before we finally decided on the medication. And a lot of other things happened while we were still navigating the whole medication thing, but I will just cut all of that out. But eventually, after talking to a child psychiatrist who happened to also have a child on the autism spectrum, and she was able to convince me why the medication was needed, especially at this particular time when my son was going through a lot, especially apparently because of the change and the separation from the family. And so we started the medication in February 2025. It's a month to his birthday. So what we did in that period is that my husband asked us to come back home from where I was with my son, while we stayed at home for like a month while my son takes the medication, and just let the medication start to, sometimes a lot of these medications take some time to, and even the doctors told us it will take some time. And so we're like, let's just stay at home, so as when the medication starts to really have the effect, he will be in school. And so we did that, and by March we were back in school. And the good thing about this was that I immediately started journaling. From the day we got the medications, I started to journal. He was given a prescription of Risperidone, and I started to journal. I put down, the dose, any signs, everything I was noticing. I was journaling every day, my observations. And I noticed he was becoming really sensitive. He was really cranky. A lot of things, all of my observations I was jotting, and I was also following up with the doctor, the specialist who gave us the prescription. And by the time we got back, my son was back in school, and this incident happened again. And it just continued to it didn't get better, because I was hoping with the medication it was going to get better. And by then, he'd used the medication for about 3 weeks, I think, which I expected that he would have started to, some things would have started to become a bit calmer. But it wasn't. It was getting worse. It was even worse than when we started, before we started the medication. And so the school was still calling me. The calls continued, and most of the times that I've called, okay, so like they've called twice, I wasn't able to pick him up, because most times they call and they're like, can you pick Khalil up? He's behaving so, and then they just complain that he's out of control, blah, 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 and I'll be like, okay, I'll be there. But there was this particular incident, there was this particular day. Most times I'm not even at home, I'm far away somewhere. I have to get back to the school. Before I get to the school, it's already time for him to close. But this particular day, I was at the salon. My hair was already in the washer, it's like literally pouring water, and shampooed my hair when the call came in. And I told the secretary that called, and I told them that I am not at home, but I'll be there as soon as I can. And coincidentally, I got there just at the same time the school closed. And I think there was another incident like that. So this particular last incident that happened, I went to pick my son from school. They called me. I dropped him off at school. Barely an hour later, the call came in. And I was already getting this panic, like anxiety attacks. And once the call comes in, I was already going through so much. I couldn't take the calls anymore. Once it comes in, because there's always something different, and it was getting so much, it was getting to me, and I just couldn't take it anymore. and I needed to see a specialist myself. I was about going out for my own appointment when the call came in, and I said, you know what, I can't be there at this time. And I had to tell them that I can't be there. I'm not at home. I can't pick Khalil today. I'll pick him up when I'm done. But I just even couldn't move. And I dropped my phone because I think I had a low battery. I dropped my phone at home. Long story short, they kept calling me. Because since I knew they already called me, I left my phone at home. I wasn't expecting any other call. I had a very low battery and there was nothing I could do with that. So I left it charging at home and I went out. And by the time I came back, I saw like 20 missed calls from the school. And I was like, what is happening? So I got to the school. There was a lot of, the energy was so, I was wondering what happened. It was like everybody was tense. It was like my son had, caused the whole scene. I didn't even understand what was going on. And I was called to the director's office for the first time. To be honest, I thought that they were going to say we should pack our things and leave, and they expel my son and my son, yes, from school that day. But then I went. I was still going through that. The anxiety had already gotten to me. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I was just there. I was sweating. My heart was palpitating. Like I was just going through so much. I can't even explain how it is, but I know that I just couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And when I got to the director's office, she was mad. She was just talking, saying a lot of things. And I just watched her, accusing me of all sorts of things. They said, that they've called me several times before. And they've called me several times before, that the admin said every time they called me to come and pick up my son, if there's an issue that I don't come, and this is always happening. And I'm like, how many times did this happen? I was always there to pick up my son. I'm not even that kind of a mom. But just because I couldn't come once or twice, they put everything. I can't even go into details. I was being spoken to like I was nothing, and it was just, I was just looking at her because, like I said, I couldn't talk. In my mind, I know she doesn't know the kind of parent I am. She just looks at me, oh, this one, I'm in my hijab. Maybe probably I'm not educated enough. I do not even know what I'm doing, because she doesn't know me. It was the first time I was having that one-on-one meeting with the director, but the teachers, they know me, they know my capability. But from what the director was talking to, the way she was talking to me, she did not have my memo. She didn't know who I was, and I just let it. But from everything that she was saying, it dawned on me that they didn't believe that I had started giving my son medication. It was more like accusation. She was asking me for results. She wants to see these prescription. She was just going on and on. I said, okay, it's fine. And I picked up my son, and then we went home. I could remember the way my son was that day. He could feel that I was sad. He was walking on eggshells around me. He kept going back and forth. I was in the room. Oh, yes, and I cried. I spoke to my husband. I spoke to a few friends. And I was really furious. By the time I go home, I was really mad. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back there today. No, I'm not going to wait. It was on a Friday, I think. I was like, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to tell them my peace of my mind. And my husband was like, just calm down. You don't need to go anywhere today. You can just schedule a meeting and go there when you are calm, but you cannot go with this temper. And I'm thankful that I did that. So I used the opportunity. I printed out everything, all the evidences I have. And I was so happy that I had the journal. The journal really came handy for me. So I took my journal, all the receipts for the medication, everything, all the evidences that I had, everything. I showed up on Monday. I was calm. I was courageous. I was not nervous. There was nothing anymore. Since I was already, also, talking to someone, treating myself, I was able to have a clear head by the time I went for the meeting. And I went for this meeting with the director was there. This time around, the teachers were there. Everyone was there. And then we started talking. And once they started talking, I gave them everything. I was giving them evidence. I said, look at the journal. I gave them the journal. I read everything out from the journal. I said, yes, I noticed all of these things as well. I've noticed all of these things, and it is all part of the medication. I guess the medication takes a longer while for some kids to work. It's not the same way for every child. But you accusing me of not giving my son medication, why would I lie about that? But that's by the way. And by the time I was done, I presented everything, even the director couldn't even say anything. And I told them everything, the same thing I've been telling them since I put my son. I usually, when I start with any school or any teacher, I fill them in about my son, his strengths, his weaknesses. I give them a resume of who my son is and what his needs looks like. But they didn't take many of these things serious from the beginning. So eventually, when they brought in another special needs teacher, who now came and was now saying that. But I said, this is the same thing I've been suggesting since he started, for him to have his visual, schedule, for him to have his routine. I suggested this with you. I even suggested that I should create one in English and they could have one in Portuguese, since we have, we're living in a bilingual, environment. At home, it's English, in school it's Portuguese. It's the same thing I've been saying all along, but suddenly now, because we're in the director's office and everyone was trying to, but I let it go. But I was really so happy, because at the end of the meeting, something happened that day. And this is why I'm sharing this story. By the end of the meeting, I could see the way the director was looking at me. It was no more looking at me like, in that a kind of a low kind of, no. She was looking at me knowing, like, as somebody that this woman knows what she's doing, and with regrets also, because she now understood much better. And I could see the way she was talking to me. She was talking to me with much more respect than she was earlier on, or the day before. And that was just what changed everything. What now really changed everything was my son. After that last meeting, that was the end of all of those behaviors. Though we did adjust the medications, because apparently he was given, the dose was too low, and so we kept moving the dose until he got to a stable dose for him. But the medication aside, that simple act of me going to advocate for my son, it changed a lot of things. He could see everything, he could hear everything, even though he was out there, but he knew that something was going on. And that was the last time I was called to any meeting. The last time I was called to come and pick up my son, those calls stopped coming in. The meetings stopped coming. It was always, everything changed. Like, it was a completely different person. And it got me thinking. Khalid became a very different version of himself. He goes to school, he was happy. Even the environment became more calmer. The teachers, everyone were better understanding of him, or at least better supported him. And even at home, I could see a lot of things change. And this really made me to, reflect on when we are, silent amidst the battles our children are going through, especially in school. Some parents will just keep quiet and take all of those things that comes with, just because the school is, like as if the school is doing you a favor. You're not able to talk, you're not able to advocate for your child. You're just there like, what, I don't want to be a burden. We are never a burden. This is their right. So what I really want us to take away from all of this is that it is your right as a parent, especially when you have a non-verbal child or a pre-verbal child, to speak up for them. Your silence can be easily misinterpreted as being nonchalant, or you don't care. And to be honest, this is not the first time incidents like this has happened. And this is why for the first time I chose to speak out. You know, when you when you speak for your child, they see the value of this child better. They understand your child better. They accept your child better for who he is. When you educate people about your child, you're opening people's minds and their eyes to see what they cannot see barely. You are opening their mindset to understand and accept our children, that they are not different, that just because they think differently or behave differently doesn't mean that they should be treated completely different than the rest of their peer groups. And I've seen a lot of parents, I've had sessions with parents who will come and will complain and will just be quiet about their children's condition, while we miss out on the growth that can happen when we speak for our children. As we approach Autism Awareness Month in April, I want us all as parents to really sit down and think about, are we just nurturing our children and protecting them, or sidelining them, hiding them away from the world, or we are preparing them for the world that they do not know yet? We need to ask ourselves, are we preparing them to be able to advocate for themselves? For me, these are one of the things that, as my son is growing older, he just turned 11 a few days ago. Alhamdulillah for everything. Advocating for him, this is just the beginning. I have been doing so for years, even before he had the words, even before he had the understanding, and I will continue to do so, not in the way that I'll be shielding him or protecting him, but also by empowering him, providing him with tools for him to be able to advocate for himself. So I hope that this message, though very long, is very empowering. I hope that it resonates with someone out there. I know there are other families out there who are navigating this separation, who are going through instances they do not understand, who are going through experiences that their children are displaying, which could be from the separation anxiety and a lot more. I want you all to know that you're not alone. For everything that we are doing for our children, we are planting seeds that tomorrow will go into a very into something beautiful beyond our expectations. But what we do for our children today is what will determine the fruits that will yield tomorrow. And I do hope that if you are watching this till the end, share this message with someone who needs to hear this. Before I go, I want us to remind us of something. Our journeys doesn't always have to look the same. We are all walking different paths, even though we are parents of children with special needs or children on the autism spectrum. But each one of our children is different, and we cannot use one person's journey to judge other people's journey, but we can learn from it. And just like I always say, it's never there's no reason why you shouldn't try, because you don't know what's going to work if you don't try. So I hope this message meets with someone who really needs to hear it, and I hope that we'll all continue to navigate this journey with intentionality, with love and with care, and treat our children just like we'll treat every other child, with even more love and compassion. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.